Hello everyone and welcome to today's demonstration, which will be covering the Image Management System, or IMS, from Hatsize. This is a self-service image management functionality where our users can configure their lab environments, make changes to them as they need without necessarily involving the need to involve our technical support team. Obviously, we're still here to assist you should you need any help, but for the most part, we believe you're capable enough to make changes to your systems and can work on it by yourself, and we now would like you to show you this. All right, on the left-hand side, I have the lab configuration button. I'll go ahead and click on that. That'll list all of the different setups or labs that we have in the system. I know today I'm going to be working on the desktop lab, so let me go ahead and search for that. And you can see it brings it right up. So I'll go ahead and click on that, and it brings it open for me. If we have IMS enabled for your lab, there will be a lab configuration button here for your configure system button. If that button is not there and you'd like to use the self-service image management system, feel free to contact us. All that means that we have not set things up on the back end to make sure that the image storage is set up properly for you to do the self-service image management. It's easy for us to make those changes for you, so just feel free to contact us and we'll do that for you. Alrighty. When you get logged into the system, you'll see that it's not a very impressive screen because there's not a lot going on. I don't have any system updates in process. I'm not trying anything, so the screen's kind of bland. But we'll change that here in just a minute. I want to go over a few different things. At the top, we have two major sections here. One is the Launch Lab, and the other one is the Version Management, those two tabs. So we'll get into those in a minute. But on the right-hand side, we also have this Getting Started area, which gives you kind of a quick tour of what needs to be done in order to do your image management. So if you're ever confused, need a little help, feel free to click on that. In this case, it's a three-step process. You launch your lab, verify that it works all right, and you save it. Then you go into Launch Lab and you try the lab out, make sure everything's good. And then when you're good, sure it's all good, then we go over and then actually do a publish. So we'll walk through those steps today for you and show you how that all works. So let's tuck this away for now because we don't need it and start with that Create Version. Once you click on that button, this little dialog box opens. It shows you that the default here is for a 60-minute start time. If I need more time than that, I know I've got some of the things that's going to take me longer, I can change it. But for the most part, we feel that 60 minutes should give you enough time to make your changes and save them off. By default, it opens up the last version that you've been working on, or the published version. In this case, it is version 2. But for this update, I know I want to start over with a new base image and do a new install or software or add a license key or whatever it is I want to do. So I'm just going to start with the base image. And then we'll go ahead and click on the Start button. By doing this, what the system will do now is go off and provision those systems, set them up for me using that base image, and give me access to them so that I can make changes to them and any adjustments that are necessary for my environment. And then again, I'll have the option to save those off and work on those as you would normally, as you expect to do in a remote environment. Again, I want to point out that we're doing all of this using HTML5, so no plugins, no Java, no software has been installed at all. I'm just using a Java-enabled browser in order to do this. All right, you can see the system's come back. Reservation is now spinning up. It'll give me a status of ready here. Right now it's preparing, but when it's done, this preparing will turn to a green ready button. I'll be able to click on that. But while it's doing that, let me point out a few other things for you. In the middle of the screen, we have two buttons. We have the Extend Lab button and we have the End Lab button. So the Extend Lab button gives you the option to add more time. So if you're getting to the end of your 60 minutes and you know you need to add a little more time, or if you made the reservation and say, nope, I know I'm not going to be able to get to this for a few minutes and I want to bump it up, I can add a few more minutes here and then go ahead and hit the Extend button and it will add additional time for me. And on the End Lab button, even though I'm still preparing, I'll go ahead and show you what that looks like, is it gives you the option of when you do go to end your lab, you can save it by giving it a title and a description and saving that, or in this case, if you want to discard it, you can go ahead and click on the discard button and do that as well. But because I'm just starting up here, I don't want to do either one of those, so I'll go ahead and cancel out of that. And you can see this lab is already now available for me to go into it. The button now is ready. But before I do, I want to point out a few other things. This lab is a single image lab, which means I have one system assigned to it. If I had multiples, they'd be strewn out here. You see the different thumbnails for all the different systems. And by thumbnails in this case, because it's the image management system itself and not the full TrueLab environment, the thumbnails themselves will not be populated, so the images will not be available to you. So it'll just show you the click here to connect icons. And for this lab, both the instructor system and the student system are the same. So you see it says instructor/student at the top here. And that's because we use the same starting point for both. If we wanted them to start differently, to have different starting points, you'd have another image over here to the right for the student, and then this one would just be labeled instructor. And you may have different systems in case you have different software installed for the instructor, or different capability, or you may have a different license key installed, or perhaps you have some presentation materials, PowerPoints, or PDF files that you may want them to present to the students. So that may be a difference you have between the two systems, if that is the case. Or you might have a client-server environment where the instructor has, a server that the students are all connecting to via a desktop, and maybe the student machine's only a desktop. But those are the different reasons they have it. We have a little system button down here that gives you the ability to connect via the default method, which in this case I know is an RDP connection. So if I just click on the click here to connect, it would connect via RDP. But if for some reason I needed to connect via the console to interact with Windows, to interrupt the boot process somehow, to install something, change services, that kind of thing, I could do that by clicking on that button. But in this case, I don't need to do that. So we'll just go ahead and click on the thumbnail itself and start the system directly. Opens up in a new tab, opens up the desktop for me, and there we go. In this case, very simple lab, not much installed on it, but I want to make a couple of changes for the students. First thing I'm going to do is take a keys file that I have on my desktop, and I'm just going to drop it on the desktop, and that'll do an auto upload to the environment. So that could be a software file that you want to install or anything else. In this case, it's just a key file. And then when I browse over to the share file, the upload directory, you'll see that my keys file is there. And for this lab, I'm going to assume that maybe one of the things the students need to do is to install that key file. So I'll just go ahead and make it easy for them, and I'll drop it right on the desktop for them, shortcut to that keys file, so they can then open it up and then cut and paste that keys file into our software. So that's kind of the premise I'm going with this. And let's go ahead and close that. So that's all I wanted to do for the change for this, to give it kind of a current key. It's all set to go, good to go, and I'll go ahead and now disconnect from it. Before I do that, a couple other things here. If you need to change the screen resolution, you can still do that. That's available to you. And if you need to bring up the on-screen keyboard, you have the option of doing that directly right here as well, as I'm typically used to from the lab environment. All right, so let's go ahead and disconnect. And now let's go ahead and save that lab. So I'll go ahead and end the lab. In this case, I want to give it a title. I do want to save it, so it's there we go. And I'm going to put, with key file or something, And if I want to put a note on it, maybe I know the key file expires on the 31st of December or something like that. So I'll just put my note to myself as to, what it's all about, and I can keep that in mind. All right, there you go. And let's go ahead and save that. System gone ahead. Again, it looks like you've not done much, but if you look at the message up here, it says it's being saved. So let's jump over our versions and see what's going on over there. So in the version tab, you'll see that I have all my saved versions, and they'll just all list out here if I have multiples. It'll tell me the date and time that they were saved, and it will tell me the person that saved them. So if I have multiple people working on different versions, I could say, hey, Joe, come in and start working on my version 2, can you go ahead and update it, or version 3, whatever you want to work on. And you can work on it. If I need to change the title or the description, click on the little pencil object. I have the ability to do that to give myself a little bit more information. And if I know I'm not going to use it anymore, I can click on the delete button. You can see that third item, the one that I saved with key file, that's down here, and it is currently in the saving mode. The system is smart enough to know that if I have this lab also running in some of our other data centers, it will automatically sync those changes out to our other data centers, Frankfurt, Singapore, or Toronto. But most of the labs themselves are being built in our main data center, which is outside of Calgary, Alberta. So again, that auto sync would occur if this lab were something that we made available in the other data centers for you. It takes a few minutes to save, depending on how big your images are and how many changes you've made. Before I leave this screen, I do want to show a couple of things. I want to point out to you the auto save lab that's here. It has no description, but it has a title of autosave. This indicates that I had a lab running. I was in the create version and I was working on the environment, but then I did not save it. I got distracted, I got disconnected, didn't get back to it, dragged into a meeting, whatever, and just didn't complete the lab and end it normally either by saving it or discarding it. So the system auto-saved all at work for me, so I won't lose my changes. Now, if I'd done no work, I just started it up and then got distracted, spent no work on it, I know I could delete it. But maybe I'd spent an hour or two installing software, getting things configured. The system now saves that work for you so that you can come back and use that as your starting point, and you can complete the configuration from there. making sure that everything's fine. If you know you don't need it, you can go ahead and click the trash can and delete it. So we do that to help protect you if you've done all that extra work. And the last thing at the top here is the published version, where once you've saved off these versions, you can select which one of the versions you want to make active for your course. And you can use that for future courses and go from there. So if I know I want this to use version 2, or if I know I want to use my base image, whatever, I can change that. I can click the Save button, and then for all future events, both from an instructor-led perspective as well as a self-paced perspective, would use this as the starting point for that lab. So it's kind of a handy feature you can use. Make sure you do that. But as the instruction said, before we do this, we need to go back and let's go back to our versions and let's try a lab. So here you click on the try lab version. Pick any one of your versions that you want to use. I'll use the base image again just because it loads a little bit faster because it doesn't have the extra changes in it. We'll load that one up real quick and see how that goes. So that'll spin up, do the same thing. It'll reserve a system for me and spin up, and I can try it. Now the key difference here, and we'll show it to you in a minute, is that the difference between the try it and the create is the try is a non-savable environment. You can make all the changes you want in it. You can try the labs, try your exercises, but you will not be able to save those changes when you're done, unlike the create version. So here it simulates more of the environment that you'd use if you're actually launching it. If you launch it, it'll open up the normal environment for you. It would look very similar where you can have the interaction between the student system and the instructor system, so you can check all that out. And that would work normally very similar to what it would in a lab view full-on environment. But you can't save the changes. So a hint to you, or kind of a best practice, if you're unsure and thinking you might need to make changes, go ahead and launch the create version. Make sure that that works and everything's there. You won't have that same interaction, but you can do that. But again, we always recommend that you do a full try to make sure everything works properly before you publish a version out to the environment. And as you can see here, we remind you of that with this information box at the bottom to indicate that this is a non-updatable version, so you cannot make any changes. They will not be saved. Can't save them at that point. It's just taking a copy of your image that you used and spinning it up in a pseudo production environment. And then from there, once it does spin up, you'll be able to click on the Enter Lab buttons here, which will turn from the gray to the black once they become available to you. And you can go ahead and try out your labs and make sure everything works as necessary. And then once the saving's done, you will be able to then use this version here as a production version, but obviously we can't use it yet in either a try mode or as a production mode until the saving has been completed. So I wanted to point that out to you. Okay, well that's the overview of the image management system, self-serve. Gives you a chance to work in the environment and play with it. I hope you found this video to be of interest and help. Thank you and have a great day.